Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jesse here with JLSComics. Welcome back to another review. I saw Suicide Squad on Friday. Today's Sunday, so it's a couple minutes or a couple days late getting my review out, but definitely wanted to share my thoughts on it and kind of just take you through what I thought of the movie. And we'll give it at the end a nice little rating, a little grade. I have a 1 out of 5, and then, well, the scale of 5 and then a scale of 10 as well. So depending on which one you follow, you can take your pick on those. So this movie came out on August 5th. It was written and directed by David Ayer. Executive producers were Zack Snyder and Jeff Johns. And also on writing, and a lot of the inspiration for the source material came from John Ostrander, who actually wrote the 1987 run, which was the volume 1, first one called Suicide Squad there. Also starred Will Smith as Deadshot, Margot Robbie, Harley Quinn, the wonderful Viola Davis as Amanda the Wall Waller, Jared Leto played the Joker. Common was credited as playing Monster T. We had Jay Courtney as Captain Boomerang, Jay Hernandez as El Diablo, and then Adewale Akanuye Agbaje as Killer Croc. And I just butchered that name, but it's Adewale, I know is right. Cara Delevingne played the Enchantress. Joel Kinnaman was Flag. Adam Beach played Slipknot. Karen Fukuhara played Katana. And there were a couple others in there, but being that this is a non-spoiler review, I am leaving those out. So let's talk about the movie itself. It was, very simple sort of plot. Basically kind of introducing everybody to the characters and, letting people know who they are. So the movie kind of opens up. It talks about Deadshot and who he is in the movie. You can see here. I'm going to go through these. I put together this little slide here. So this is the Suicide Squad #1, the John Ostrander run there. So it opens up with Deadshot, and seeing kind of who he is. We're introduced to these characters, and that's one of the things I liked good about this movie is that these were a lot of characters that are sort of, they're not the A and B characters, with a couple exceptions, of course, in the DC universe. So it really needed to introduce themselves, not only to casual moviegoers or people who aren't familiar with the universe, but people such as myself who have been reading comics and aren't quite familiar with all of these people. So I think they did a really good job of that. Some people said that, it seemed like a series of vignettes in the beginning, just kind of the way they did it with like intro music and like a little splash page. And then we got some of their backstory. So that was, some people, I guess, find it distracting, but I actually found it to be kind of an artistic way to do it. There's a guy, his name's David Bardwell. He's a film theorist and historian. Kind of categorizes movies in terms of if they did well, based on a couple things. The motivation for it was it compositional? Did it flow logically? Was it realistic? So it was what happened realistic in the context of the film. Intertextual, meaning is the film true to its source material? And then his fourth category would be artistic. So are the shots, how is it, in an artistic manner? And again, that part with the vignettes kind of falls into that. So sometimes people thought it was maybe just distracting or hard to follow, where it was jump back and forth from the past to the future. But I actually thought it was a pretty great way to do it. And it made sense to me, especially with Viola Davis kind of talking over them. So let's talk about the characters themselves here. The first was Joel Kinnaman. The first one to talk about that is he played Rick Flag. You can see here his first appearance is Brave and the Bold, number 28. That was actually the first iteration of Suicide Squad back in 1959, so quite a long time ago. We've had a few different volumes since then. So he was just, your typical Spec Ops guy. He did well for his role. Definitely was sort of the rock for the group, kind of held everything together, where Amanda Waller wasn't around. So I think he did well. He wasn't maybe a standout, but he definitely was one of the pillars of the group. So There's him. Speaking of pillars, Amanda Waller, she's one of the few characters in here that not only has no superpowers per se, but she's probably one of the more intimidating, more powerful characters. She's one that, all these people have, you know, they're metahumans. They got, they can shoot fire, whatever it is, but they're all afraid of Amanda Waller. I think that she's fantastic. Viola Davis really knocked it out of the park with this, and she was probably one of my favorite characters in this film. Next, we have, of course, Harley Quinn. First appearance is Batman Adventures number 12. I really liked Margot Robbie in this role. I think that she carried the film quite a bit, and without her in the film, I'm sure it would have been a quite different movie, different feel, different sort of atmosphere to the movie. So I really think that not only having Harley Quinn in there, somebody that's kind of crazy and out there, but also Margot Robbie in the role. She really did a great job with it, and I hope they actually do a solo movie for her. I think that there's been talk of that already, so have that to look forward to. But she had a lot of really funny lines, and definitely hers seemed more natural. Some of the others seemed a bit more sort of tacked on. I know they did some editing on the movie where David Ayer had his, and then Warner Brothers took it, made their edits. Then they saw the response to Batman v Superman. So it's like, oh, we need to make this funny. So they went back and slapped in some scenes where there was just some jokes. And some of those really did feel like they were tacked on. But a lot of what Harley was saying didn't necessarily feel like that. So I think those were kind of written in by David and Jeff Johns, quite frankly, too. Definitely. As an EVP on the movie, had his hands in it. So that was Harley Quinn. Harleen Quinzel. All right, next we have Deadshot, played by Will Smith. His first appearance was Batman number 59. You can see that there on the right. He was one of the focal points of the movie that opened with him. And he did a good job making the character likable. He was gave it some more nuance and dimension than previously I had known about Deadshot. So I think that with that in mind, he definitely did justice to the character. I was kind of worried because Will Smith is huge star, big personality. I was kind of worried it was going to be Will Smith in the Suicide Squad, or just kind of focused on him, or he'd be trying to steal as many scenes as possible. And yes, he kind of stood out in scenes, and that's perfectly fine. But he also did a really good job of sharing the screen with the rest of the ensemble. So I think he did really great with that. I think the last movie kind of like that, where he kind of had to share with so many other stars, was all the way back to Independence Day. He's done plenty of movies since then, but not with such a big ensemble cast. So I think he did a pretty good job. Next, we have Captain Boomerang. Captain Boomerang was played by Jay Courtney. His first appearance was Flash 117. He was a, interesting character. As you can see on the left there, his original costume maybe wouldn't have translated so well to the screen. So they changed him around a bit. He was an interesting, quirky sort of guy. Definitely not, I would say, one of the standouts, but he definitely filled in where he needed to. And there was one scene where they were all fighting, and he just kind of like had to open a beer to stop on the side. It was funny. It made me laugh. But for what he was, he did all right. Now we have here Cara Delevingne. She played the Enchantress. The first appearance of the Enchantress was Strange Adventures 117. One of my critiques for this movie was the villains, and that would include Enchantress and her brother. Didn't feel like they were as strong and as intimidating as maybe they could have been. And we'll get to that in a minute because we're going to talk about the plot. But I don't know. She had this like really weird dance when she was the Enchantress that I don't know. I don't know if she was one of my favorite characters in it. So I think if I'm going to give one critique, it's going to be on the villains. So that being said, her costume and her look were pretty phenomenal. She definitely looked like a witch, and especially when she was like on the ground and stuff and really dark. So visually, I think she did well, but the character itself maybe could have been a little stronger of a villain. All right, so we have Katana next. Katana was played by Karen Fukuhara. Her first appearance was Brave and the Bold, number 200, and you can see that there on the left. She was an interesting character. She kind of was on the she joined where everybody else was kind of forced because they were in jail. She joined willingly. She was kind of, protecting Amanda Waller in parts, and she had a cool introduction when they were getting on the helo. She kind of like jumped on the back of it real quick. She's cool. We didn't get to learn too much about her, just a little bit of her backstory, but I hope they explore her character more in future movies. So I hope they do some like spin-offs, and I hope that she's one of them that gets a solo. So I liked her look. I like the character. But, when you're sharing the screen with so many characters, it's hard to give everybody as much time and as much attention as maybe they would want, right? So really the focus for the movie, like I said, was probably Deadshot, Harley Quinn, Amanda Waller, and yeah, to some extent, Enchantress as well. But yeah, Karen Fukuhara, she's a good katana. All right, now we have Fury of Firestorm number 28, which saw the first appearance of Slipknot, and Slipknot was played by Adam Beach. Really didn't get to know much about him at all in the movie. I don't really want to say much on it because this is, like I said, a spoiler-free review. If and when I do a full review, I'll talk more about him. But he's just kind of just there for a little bit. Okay. El Diablo, he was first seen in All-Star Western number 2. It's a 15 center on the comic book there. Pretty interesting, different look now than where he started. As you can see, he had on like a hat and a cape, and he had a black horse. And over on the right, he's in a shirt with tatted up and everything. So at first, I didn't really like this character, the movie version that is. But as it went on and we kind of learned more about him, I definitely liked him more and more. So towards the end, especially with what happens and everything, he ends up being like, probably one of my top 4 or 5 for the movie. So I think that he did really good, and a good sort of progression of the character as well. He could have just stayed sort of as two-dimensional character, but he didn't. It's definitely an interesting subplot for the movie with him. So that was Jay Hernandez. All right, Killer Croc, first seen in Detective 523. This was an interesting character. This is an interesting look to translate to live action and sort of pull it off. But look-wise, I think they did well. He didn't do a whole lot of talking and stuff. He was just there as sort of the muscle for the team. He did talk a little bit, but he kind of was in the background for most of the time, just looking mean and angry. That being said, he did all right for the character. Next, we have, of course, the Joker. Batman number 1 was his first appearance, and that was Jared Leto. What do I say about the Joker? I don't want to say anything. He might come after me. No. He was definitely a different take on the Joker than what we've normally seen, from back in the 60s to, Jack, and then we had Heath. So, those are all really strong, powerful Jokers, and to be another successful Joker, you have to have a really different interpretation, so you're not living under their shadow. And he definitely brought a different interpretation to this character. At times, it was a little like, oh my gosh, a little sort of cringy, but at other times it was really, really powerful performance, and definitely was intimidating, and you could tell he was evil and crazy, and that he loved Harley Quinn very much. With all the edits and everything, he got chopped out quite a bit, and kind of, as one reviewer said, he kind of was stuck on the periphery of the movie. He was more the B plot than the A plot. Towards the beginning, or towards the front half of the movie, he was seen a lot more than towards the end, and I think that was more about the editing that happened more than anything else. All right, so what did I like about the movie? I thought it was really fun. It wasn't too serious, and I knew that. It was just trying to be a good, entertaining time. And Harley Quinn was a lot of fun. I think that she really brought the movie. And like I said before, some of her jokes and stuff didn't feel as sort of tacked on as some of the others did. Another thing, Deadshot too. I thought he was pretty likable, and those were the two sort of the focus of the movie, as I've said. The movie was pretty highly stylized, meaning there was a lot of slick action, a lot of just the imagery and the coloring on it was pretty spectacular. So I really like that. The great characterization, the intros to it. I'm going to talk about the plot in a second, which was not necessarily a positive for me, but that allowed for a lot of character development. With the intros and everything, the backstories, and I think that's kind of what they were getting at, just introducing these characters, letting us know who they were, letting us get familiar with them, and letting us care about them as well is pretty important, especially whatever's going to happen with the DC EU in the future. I definitely want to be caring about the characters. So now, what did I think could be different? The pacing on the movie was not. It didn't flow smoothly. Sometimes, it would be kind of slow, and all of a sudden there'd be boom, boom, a lot of action, a lot of things happening all at once. So it was like, whoa, And I think again that was the editing that happened. It seemed like there were some scenes that cut out that would have been important to have there to kind of make sense from why they went from one scene to the next. So that would be the editing. There was a few different versions of this movie. There was David Ayers, where he did the editing. Warner Brothers they did their editing, and they mashed it all together. And then there was some stuff that from San Diego Comic-Con. They did more editing after that. So there's a few different versions of this movie floating about. And when that happens, the plot, the movie, is going to be affected. And when not everybody's on board with the same vision or communicating, quite frankly, as they should, that's inevitable that's going to happen. So that's kind of one thing that is sort of a trend or a theme with Warner Brothers. We saw that with Batman v Superman and some others as well. So they need to kind of nail that down to make these, give the reins to David Ayer, give the reins to Jeff Johns, let them do their thing. Stop meddling. All right. The villains, I mentioned that before, Enchantress and her brother. I think they could have been stronger villains. It was sort of a weak point for me. That being said, it did sort of open up the DC cinematic universe to the more esoteric, mystical, magical elements that Marvel hasn't really had a chance to explore too much until we get to Doctor Strange. But I think that they could have picked a stronger villain, I guess, for them to go after. I don't know. It just didn't feel like it was as important that they go after them. The stakes weren't high enough, I guess, to call out a squad like this. And that's something maybe that Superman would have just kind of taken care of in a few minutes, but he's perceived to be dead in this world. So the plot on the movie, it was fairly thin. It was, introduction to the characters. It was, giving them a situation and a couple choices. And once they kind of did that, let us know who they were, they just really quickly went into the action. Didn't really waste any time getting to that. And it kind of felt like two separate movies in that regard. And it was just simple, go after these people and save the day and try not to get killed. That was pretty much it in terms of the plot. So, the other thing I mentioned, and again, the editing, and I keep going back to that, but I really think that it is important to mention, is that the jokes were some of them felt kind of tacked on. And they just kind of, we've read about them going back and doing reshoots to make it, air quotes, funnier. And you could sort of see where that happened with the movie. So that is it. The plot, the editing could have been improved, but it was fun. It was not too serious. It was really enjoyable for me. I definitely liked it a lot. Was it a perfect movie? No, by any means, but I really had a good time with it. And I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes in the future. If you haven't seen it yet, I hope that me not giving any spoilers helped, but I will say stay through the mid-credits because there's something you want to check out there. So going back to what David Bardwell said about the different types of film motivation and what makes a film good. You can't measure one genre of good. What is good, right? And in this case, you know, if you look at these things, this movie was more artistic, and that's an extremely subjective thing to have is the artistic, because like I said, what might be distracting or what might be horrific to one person might be beautiful or might make complete sense to the next person next to you. So that part, it's really hard to you know, say, where some of the others are just either, you know, black and white. They're very concrete. It's either, you know, it either stuck to the source material or it didn't. It was either realistic or it didn't. It was either logical or it wasn't, you know? So it's hard to kind of tack that down. It's not really good enough just to say it was good. It was good how, you know, you got to kind of give more than that. But let me know your thoughts down below, and be curious to hear if you agree with me on any of these points or all of them or none of them. Definitely looking forward to reading that. And now we get to the rating. I have two scales. I have a, you know, a 5-point scale, and I have a 10-point scale. On the 5, it's going to be 3.5 out of 5. Will be my rating there. And on the 10-point scale, I'm going to give it a nice 7.5 out of 10. It probably would have gotten a 10 if the villain, or not a 10, you know, higher grades, you know, if the villains were stronger, if, you know, some of the pacing was there as well. But it was mostly in regards to the villains and all that good stuff. So there you go. That's my review. Like I said, 7.5 out of 10 or 3.5 out of 5. This is Jesse here with JLSComics. Thanks for watching and listening to my Suicide Squad movie review, and I'll see you guys in the future for the next movie.